Your frail beliefs, you only seek to insulate your image and continue down the stream in the direction clout and credit steers. Directly from your mouth into am I the asshole Reddit's ears. Directly back into the greasy pockets of some Gates Foundation financiers. And then directly back into the frantic final thoughts of early trial Neuralink volunteers, staring at the numb and mumbling vacancies where recently had been their peers. Half of whom are glitching with the memory stuck on pause, and half have zero fucking clue just who they are or why they're here. It's been said that fear is all we have to fear, but that was back before the basosphere condenser came along, distilling concentrated fear that's diamond pure, crystal clear, oppressor strong, and woven into every single article you read and song they let you hear. And then Elon heard that Jeff enhanced our fears by 86%, and he said, hold my beer. And not a single sheep among the herd would turn their head or say a word, cause they were all too busy begging for the shears, begging for the muzzle, happy just to guzzle, feed, and watch a screen for all their years. Man, to each his own, can't afford a home, but they'll let you have your cozy little ecosphere, where there among your own devices you can break the seventh seal, overthrow the oracles and slay the seer. All the tomes were burned and all the lips were seared. Shut your eyes and all our lives just disappear. Now blink them twice. Welcome to your ecosphere.
They'll gladly pay you by the hour for a minute or so, so you can sign off on the towers where they'll piss on your home. And if you feel like you're just powerless to answer them no, it's 'cause you are. They'll gladly pay you by the hour for a minute or so, so you can sign off on the towers where they'll piss on your home. And if you feel like you're just powerless to answer them no, it's 'cause you are. It's 'cause you are. They'll gladly stagnate a living wage, snap the chains, bury it. Labor slaves in rusty cages dragged behind a chariot, led by Mr. Racial Jungle, Joseph R. Iscariot, fighting over scraps as just all with variants and BuzzFeed clickbait, straight until we're paralyzed, trying to distract us from the concentration camps that Joe had swore he'd close but only chose to amplify, where they got 50-something kids in cages made for 5 to occupy. And no, she hasn't seen the camps, but Harris swears they're paradise. She tells us the facilities are safe, and that right down to the women, they are regularly sterilized. Then she throws her head back and she proceeds to laugh that sort of heartless cackle you'd expect from someone working steadfastly on behalf of the virus and a Congress full of parasites. And where was I? I was busy cashing every blue check, demonstrating plainly all the narratives expected from the verified. I was busy breeding verbal leeches by the terabyte. Train them to exsanguinate the wealthy while they sleep at night. Bleed the oil barons dry and barren, say they showed us how to share and now we share alike. Tell them I contracted rabies from a feral mic. Now I'm just another species losing sleep to noise pollution and these glaring lights, forced to change its habits and adapt to just survive. But Now it's safe to say that some of us are thriving in the moment, throwing shit on presidential homes beneath the Paris skies. So if you feel like you're just powerless, I guess you bought the lie. But I can tell they're petrified of our collective might, 'cause I can hear those gentrifiers weeping at the sight of our collective rights. And I only can imagine the intensifying fear of knowing revolution's near, and all that's left to do is simply wallow in the thick anticipation of the rabid bite. And baby, one day you can ask your leaders just what that was like before you grab a slice. So if you think you're powerless, allow me now to change your mind. Honey, if you think you're powerless, allow me now to change your mind. See, they'll pay you hourly, tax them each apart, and build a shining tower out of loopholes and cards, and tell you that you're powerless to keep you in the dark, because you aren't, because we aren't. You see, they'll pay you hourly, tax them each apart, and make you build a shining tower out of loopholes and cards, where they'll tell you that you're powerless to keep you in the dark, because you aren't, because we aren't.
Legend says that Hercules swept Cerberus right off his feet and effortlessly set him down softly as a songbird. Atlas kept the world upon his back, and every day wondered whether he could stand it any longer. And Tara Reid came out to say the man they tried to label the Messiah of morality was really just another rapist. And I don't intend to hesitate when asked who was the stronger. Tara, like Assange, knew that carrying the truth would be the hardest labor. Tara knew that her assailant wasn't gonna make us any safer, and knew he's just the type of man to hand a decent foreign leader US printed walking papers, and knew he'd be relentless and aggressive in the war he'd wage upon her very character, that his attempts to weaken and degrade and embarrass her would be her only compensation. But I strongly doubt that anyone could ever have foreseen the stream of hate that came from quote-unquote progressives and the self-styled titans of survivor advocation. So if you really think there's something to be gained out of sharing your pain with the world, you are sorely mistaken. The Biden team just dragged their feet addressing Tara's allegations. Until they had a decent list of smears, then they aired them out on every station. And it turns out no one wants to hear the truth of who they praised as being worthy of such bloated liberal celebration. That no one wants to really know the person they've so valiantly defended, even when it meant they had to gloat and shit all over someone braver than they'd be if given the occasion. Now cue the faceless comment squad invasion. Cue those fuckers crawling out the woodwork to come analyze the way you wore your hair and what you wear. Like your appearance waives your rights, or that somehow you're the reason for your situation. Somehow they've decided you should bear responsibility for what such monstrous men insist on doing. Somehow they're deluded by the empty, hypocritical, and useless fucking platitudes that bastard keeps on spewing. And I think it's very telling that the best of their excuses when they try to come and justify our president's abuses is a hearty butt Trump. In which case I'll remind you that you never saw the news attempt to sell us Donald Trump like he was morally upstanding or a decent human. But when Joe says something bigoted or ogles someone's little kid, CNN says, isn't this refreshing? Biden's like a mix of JFK and FDR with all the finer parts of Harry Truman. Christ, I know that they don't think that we're the brightest, but at least pretend we got a couple lumens. Ask yourself if you have ever questioned what they fed you, or do you just shut your eyes and then consume it? And now ask yourself if you ate every one of Biden's lies under guise of harm reduction and the promise of a slight improvement. And now imagine long ago that Biden chose to show you who he really was by traumatizing you for his amusement. Now imagine that you watched him touch a Bible with those filthy hands, and then assume the power of the highest seat in all the land, of knowing your attacker wields a global coalition born of 3-letter agencies who'll make a life's mission out of trying to discredit you through lies, damn lies, and collusion. Big tech is never gonna separate from our surveillance state. Fuck's sakes, they're just a breath away from total fusion. So there will come a time where even if you see the light, your voice will never reach the sky through all the bots and all the noise pollution. So trust us when we tell you that the masking of abuses is perhaps this country's oldest institution. And I know nothing nobler than facing it in honor of the truth when you know that the people holding power have been neutralizing truth since there was wet ink on the Constitution. So know that Tara's truth is something crucial to the movement. And if you see yourself a partner to the revolution, help this country see through all the baseless propaganda through the crux of Joe's illusions. And recognize that Tara Reid gave everything she had so she could tell us what the truth is. Recognize the decent thing to do when someone bears their soul and shows their bruises is not to ask for context or offer up your own solutions. Your job is just to listen with an honest mind and put yourself on Tara's side a moment so you understand the path she chooses. That there is no instant fame worth the dragging of your name. And if that's what you think, you've a lot to learn about the kind of facts the mob can handle and the kind that it refuses. You've a lot to learn about the news and all its many uses. Guess you've yet to learn the truth the news will serve as fruit from which they've squeezed out all the juices. And we all eat the husk and just pretend it's full of nutrients and isn't really useless. But the jaws of our ability to yield accountability are absolutely toothless. So don't you kid yourself that any lips are being loosened. They won't ever tell us where the bodies are or show us where the proof is. It's on you to recognize the lechery our president so regularly oozes. It's on you to muster up some honesty and ask yourself how Biden won your trust, but it's America that loses. Open up your eyes and learn to recognize the bruises. Open up your eyes and learn to recognize the bruises.
Lips, brand new taxes, starving all the billionaires and neutering their Visa Maxes. Topple Congress off their axis, mobilize the homeless, give them axes, call it praxis. Chop a couple limbs off the legislative branches. We'll show you the difference between air as a human right and guaranteed oxygen access. Octogenarians who barely know what day it is are culling countless citizens while sitting on a dais made of ignorance that was built on the graves of the slaves made to labor for its self-declared significance. And all to build a Congress full of millionaires who make their fortunes insider trading while they shit on all the indigent. So I got a bone to pick with our leaders, and I'll start with the ligaments. Pick right through the muscle, dig the marrow out, and serve it to the unhoused millions living in their minivans or watching their belongings get evicted from their tenement. I have a dream where we breach the walls of Congress and just let them in. And what happens next will survive in only text, cause there won't be any evidence. There will only be that heavy kind of feeling that pervades a space where there has been a reckoning and you can feel its remnants. Let any man who enters seeking power know that those who came before him suffocated on their eminence. That there once was a seal on the wall, but we quartered it and scattered all the pieces that it might prevent its semblance. And so we end the great experiment
We'll take all your billions, leave you 2 coins for the ferryman. Leave you drifting on a Dutchman, floating derelict among the wretched seraphim. For holy is the hand that wiped the land clean of those who pose as gentlemen. That's my time, honey, cue the thunderclap and strike the theremin. And so we end the great experiment.
Who are these people?
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the news of Indie News Network. INN News.
So 28.
There's 28 already? God, feels so old.
Episodes. Well, we have been going at this for a while, so yeah, it should feel old at this point. But in a good way.
Yeah. We're used to it by now. Got all the fame here. Warren's in the chat. We got Rick Solis in the chat. We got
Bill, Gordon. I think you're new, but welcome from the UK. Where in the UK you're from? Very curious. So, anyone else is here? Well, I guess they're all kind of trickling in. While everyone's trickling in, I'll
talk about our stories.
Nice. Yeah.
From Birmingham. Nice. So, but
those of you who don't know, I grew up in London, so
nice. Not Birmingham.
Not Birmingham.
But anyway, we do have some stories this evening. You later have a rant on Cori Bush, right?
Yeah, on it to end. I'll talk about it more when we get to it. I wanted to do it, but then I kind of struggled with it. I still might struggle with it.
Right.
And I think I'll struggle with it in part because I do have, not like that, I do have a connection to Cori Bush. Some of you probably know why, for one thing in particular that we're going to highlight, but this is a tough one for me. So, but yeah, we're gonna talk about some things, but we're also going to teach you some things, hopefully, through that.
And you also brought a story on some more school lunch stuff, which, you know,
more school lunch stuff. So I think I reported on an article that was written about it in May, I believe, which makes sense. And basically, in light of, due to the pandemic, we basically essentially had universal free lunches that our politicians let go, and now we're kind of back to the normal, normal stuff as far as free lunch, reduced lunch, all that stuff. And right now we're in more trying times regarding food and money and all the things that families are struggling more so now. So yeah, we'll talk about that. And then you have a very interesting story that I didn't get to read, but if you want to, I
know CJ talked a little bit about it today. Great minds think alike, I guess. But I have like a little 3-piece of stories here about the Alabama prison strike that's been happening over the last couple of weeks. So that should be interesting if people have heard about that. It's pretty fucked up what they're doing. And then I also have a thing from Schachtel on how the feds are modeling a new social, the Federal Reserve is modeling a new social credit system based off of how green your business is, essentially. So I figured we'd talk about that. But anyway, I think I think Misty did make her goal on GoFundMe for the event on October 8th.
Yes. So, want to talk about that real quick?
Yeah, they're meeting in DC at the what specific? The DOJ, right?
Justice.
Yeah.
At DC. I will be there. And I know people in different streams have asked, will it be streamed? It definitely will be streamed in some way, shape, or form by at least somebody.
Roar Media is putting it out. I know Sabby Sabs is going to try to do something from there.
Yeah.
I know you're going to try to get some recordings. Yeah. I know we should be streaming, dual streaming some of that stuff over here at INN, so stay tuned here on the channel for that. But I'm trying to remember what else, if there's anything else important other than try to show up and or support Misty if you find that pinned tweet on her profile at Starchasm Stardust.
Yeah, and as she kind of reported, shout out to her for coming on last week. More about it.
Yeah.
Sabby Sab is speaking. Jill Stein is speaking. Chris Hedges is speaking. Those are the big ones that I can think of off the top of my head, and lots more people who are going to be there. So if you're able to make it, I would love to see you guys in person. If not, it will definitely be streamed to some capacity, as we said. So definitely, look for us on Twitter at Get Indie News, and we'll give you all the details on that as we solidify some information. But we also have, I think, very quick, a little event happening the night before.
Yeah, so I don't know if I'm gonna be there or if it's just Indy. But he is debuting the Indie Media Awards there that Friday night. So that should be fun. And then I'm probably gonna do a shortened reefer after that with Indy, hopefully. Then I think Warren will probably do something secret, and then after that at like 2 a.m. my time, we're gonna do stream
Central Time, Eastern Time.
Yes. But like 11 p.m. Pacific, Tara's gonna do a stream with Maria Butina, so that should be interesting. So we'll see how that goes. But anyway, you want to get started on some stories?
Yes, sure thing.
Well, let's do it. So this is from Alabama.com, which that could lead you down some weird sites if you Google that too hard. But what's been happening in Alabama? So there's been a prison strike, and it's entered its second week, and they kind of summarize a little bit, but I did want to go into more details, so I brought a couple of their other articles with us. This is from Savannah. Tyrens-Fernandes wrote this particular piece. So the Alabama prison strike has entered its second week as inmates continue to protest the state's parole and sentencing laws and living conditions inside facilities. On September 26, inmates in all Alabama Department of Corrections prisons stopped working. Inmates normally do the work in food service, laundry, and other tasks that keep prisons running. Alabama is one of the only 7 states, including Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, South Carolina, and Texas, that do not pay inmates for labor. So Shannon Barlow, an inmate at Limestone Correctional Facility, told WBHM, "There's no hope, there's no promise of a future, and we're the ones basically who have been holding the ceiling up over our own heads all these years, and we're just waking up to the fact that this is wrong." According to WVTM, specific asks from the strikers, including the immediate repeal of Alabama's habitual offender law, a repeal of the state's drive-by shooting statute, mandatory parole criteria that guarantees parole for all eligible inmates, and ending life without parole sentences. So yeah, that's been their specific things, right? Just to reiterate, they want to repeal the Alabama's habitual offender law, which is that like a strike three strikes. Okay. Repeal the state's drive-by shooting statute, which I wonder what that is. and mandatory parole criteria. Last week, Governor Ivey called the demands unreasonable and said she hopes her plan to create the two new mega prisons using COVID relief funds will help address some of the inmates' needs. Yeah, let's build another prison. That should fix it. It's going to be like a regular Walmart, but mega this time. So, number one, our goal is for public safety, pure and simple, and the demands that they're giving are just unreasonable and would probably require other legislation. Cannot just be mandated unilaterally. We still got our 2 prisons being built, so we can better provide for the safety of the inmates as well as the workers. Meanwhile, inmates say corrections workers and officials are taking retaliatory measures against them, including reducing the amount of food they receive from 3 meals a day to 2 and canceling weekend visits due to these stoppages and the impact on staff resources, quote unquote. In an interview with AL.com, Dion Caldwell, founder of the advocacy group Both Sides of the Wall and a strike organizer, said she believes canceling visitation will increase tensions. Yeah, I don't see how that wouldn't. Right. I think canceling visitations will only compound the frustration inside, Caldwell said in an email. These men/women look forward to seeing their family. This is the only contact they physically have with them, and this is why a lot of them stay out of any trouble. Many families have taken off work, paid for travel and hotels in preparation of visitation this weekend, and they abruptly cancel it because they want to punish the men and women inside for exercising our and their First Amendment rights. They are doing exactly what they've been doing for so long, which is trying to maintain control through loss of privileges for no misconduct, retaliation, and fear. So they are doing exactly what right. So the Department of Justice sued Alabama in December 2020, alleging the failure to protect prisoners from inmate-on-inmate violence and sexual abuse, failure to protect them from excessive force by staff, and failure to provide safe conditions of confinement violate constitutional prohibitions on cruel and unusual punishment. The DOJ first made most of the allegations in April 2019 and said at the time of the lawsuit that Alabama had failed to address problems. However, a trial in the case is not expected until 2024.
Nice.
Yeah. This is more focused on like what was happening like right after that strike started happening, right? So a work stoppage by inmates in Alabama prisons to protest for better conditions has moved into its 3rd day, right? So like that other article was from like 2 weeks after that event, right? So this would be like 3 days after that event, which was on the 26th, right? So moved into its 3rd day and is resulting in fewer meals for inmates. So some claim the cut back to 2 meals a day was in retaliation for the strike. The Alabama Department of Corrections said that was not the case. The strike started Monday in conjunction with a rally where organizers called for sentencing and parole reforms in the Alabama system, which the U.S. Department of Justice said incarcerates men in violent conditions that violate the Constitution. So that's the DOJ saying this. Which they kind of went into in that previous article. But relatives and friends of inmates have reported since Monday that prisons were not serving hot meals and that prisoners were receiving no lunch. On social media, people claiming to be inmates at ADOC St. Clair and Staten prisons posted photos of trays containing a scoop of peanut butter, 2 slices of bread, and a few pieces of fruit. At another facility, men posted photos of trays with a single slice of cheese and a scoop of grits.
Ugh.
They are trying to starve us out at Staten, one posted. The kitchen at William C. Holman Correctional Facility mostly closed after the prison partially shut down in 2020, leaving inmates at the facility receiving meals from nearby GK Fountain Correctional Facility. Many inmates there are unhappy that their meals are affected by striking workers at a separate prison. Most inmates have only received peanut butter or bologna sandwiches, hot dogs, or bread slices since Monday, according to attorneys and videos posted on TikTok by people claiming to be inmates at ADOC facilities. The Alabama Department of Corrections responded to questions about the strike today, said the cutback was logistical, not retaliatory. Of course it's not retaliatory, fucking cops. Of course they would say that. No, we would never. Like, the ADOC said the strike is continuing in varying degrees at most of the state's major prisons. Alabama has 13 prisons for men and 1 for women. The ADOC said inmates were on a holiday schedule that provides just 2 meals a day. Well, happy holidays, everybody. All facilities remain operational, the ADOC said. However, these work stoppages have affected food services, given that inmate workers make up a large part of the facility support workforce. Facilities have been on a holiday meal schedule since Monday. The schedule allows for 2 meals instead of 3. This is not a retaliatory measure, but logistically necessary to ensure that other critical services are being provided. Once the work stoppages end, facilities will once again be able to provide regular meal service. ADOC is hopeful that regular meal service can be restored as soon as possible. The ADOC also said controlled movement and other security measures have been deployed to maintain a secure environment. The ADOC does not comment on specific security procedures due to the safety of the inmates, our staff, and the public. So I think CJ brought up a particular inmate who was having like health problems already, right? That required him to have like particular nutrition, right? And what that like drop in like meals quality and availability like did to that guy was pretty messed up. So, you know, if you want to go see that, you should go check CJ's stream on that. But I don't know if they include that in this story, but some programming, including Ingram State Technical College classes, have been limited, but most have not been affected because most programs have their own staff. The ADOC said it is common practice in prisons nationwide to utilize inmate workers to help provide various critical services like food, service, laundry, and etc. Collin, would you like to tell the man in this article what he's missing there? What do they do that these prisons are not doing?
Hey.
Damn right. Diane Caldwell, a founder of the advocacy group Both Sides of the Wall and a strike organizer, said it is ADOC's responsibility to feed inmates 3 times a day, regardless of whether the inmates are striking. It's like, yeah, this is your job. Like, you know, that's what we pay you to do, is give them 3 hot meals and a bunk. Like, you know, the regulations say they're supposed to be fed 3 times a day, 2 of those being hot meals, Caldwell said, and due to their shortage of staffing, they're feeding them on the holiday schedule, which shouldn't be the burden of the inmates. It's the burden of the staff because it's their responsibility to make sure that the inmates are fed. So Caldwell spoke at Monday's rally outside of ADOC offices in Montgomery. Family members of inmates said they feared for their loved ones in an environment the DOJ said was plagued with assaults, sexual abuse, weapons, drugs, and excessive force by correctional officers. The state has acknowledged problems, but has denied the DOJ claims that conditions violate the Constitution. Speakers talked about the decline in the rate of paroles granted, even for inmates who are deemed good candidates, according to the Parole Board's own risk assessment guidelines. Today, Caldwell said that leads to a loss of hope and helps feed the violence. So, what? Yeah, okay. Oh, are you moving it, maybe? That might be it.
No.
Weird.
Nope.
They have no way out, Caldwell said, and when you do that, that brings violence, because they're sitting there, everyone is aggravated, they're agitated, and their tolerance level is very low. So they need some kind of hope, some type of incentive, and some type of window to be able to enter back into society. And basically, that's through the parole board. And we need some relief there. Officials defending the parole system say the rate has declined, partly because violent offenders make up a higher proportion of the prison population than it did before changes to sentencing laws made in the last decade. Caldwell said advocates for reforms and safer prisons are not asking that dangerous offenders be released. Thoughts so far, Care Bear?
it's funny how like they're basically treating them like employees and they're not paying them.
Yes.
So it's slave labor.
That's
and
exactly they went on strike. They're like, fuck you.
Yeah.
Like,
so, and they had every right to, considering, the circumstances. But yeah, just like the cops, they're going to be like, oh, like we moved to the schedule because our workers, and I'm sure this is something that they're not necessarily saying like to the press. It's like the workers are the inmates of whom you're not paying,
right,
in order to provide the services to their own inmates, essentially. Yeah. So I'm sure they left that out on purpose in the media, given like, because then they would look like dicks. But then again,
yeah,
I'm sure the cops don't care about looking like dicks anyway.
When have they ever? Like, yeah, I mean, this is like forced hunger strike now, right? Like,
basically, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, this is literally worker struggle at the most basic level, and you can clearly see what they're willing to do when they have complete control. They're gonna remove your visitation to your family, your kids who've all planned to be here on that weekend, like they always do, so you can see your children. Like, you know what I mean? Anyway, so Caldwell says, we don't want the floodgates opened. We understand that there are people that need to be in prison. We understand that people need to do time for crimes that they committed. However, we're asking for inmates to get a fair shot. Former inmate Eric Buchanan of Birmingham, who also spoke at Monday's rally, said he hopes the strike can draw attention to conditions that are ripe for violence. The drug overdoses that's going on in the prisons, we need to see that changed. Buchanan said, fentanyl is in the prisons, heroin is there. All this stuff is not contributing to the rehabilitation of anybody. It's like survival in there now, and so we want to see the conditions change. The legislature and governor have approved a plan to build 2 4,000-bed men's prisons that will replace some of the existing facilities. Officials say that they will be safer for inmates and staff and will be better able to offer rehabilitation programs and medical care. The prisons are expected to be ready to occupy in when? 2026.
26.
So even that, like, the weirdest response ever. Like, well, we're building more prisons to, like, terrorize inmates with, like, that will immediately be filled up to make profit.
Right.
But we'll continue a little bit to the original article on their strike. So here's one of the mothers.
You're in there to help them. Don't do them like that. So if anyone got something to say, y'all come up here and talk about the people. Don't let them go down like that. I got 2 nephews in there. One been in there when he was the age of 15. He been in there 15 years. And I think it's wrong. He should be out by now. He should be out by now. And then I have another one in there. They're going to give him life because he was in a circle with someone. Vito Gilbert, Rico Gilbert, freedom, freedom, free my nephew. Thank y'all.
So, people getting in the streets for people that can't be in the streets. This article goes on. The Alabama Department of Corrections said it has received reports of inmate work stoppages, right? So both of the wall called for the strike beginning this morning as a protest of conditions in the state's overcrowded, understaffed prisons. The ADOC said it is controlling the movements of inmates and has deployed other security measures. The ADOC said it does not comment on security procedures because of the safety of inmates, staff, and the public. They cannot confirm nor deny whether they're terrible. All facilities are operational and there have been no disruption of critical services. This was, again, that Monday, right? Except what happens, like, 3 days later? He changes his tune to now there's a problem of critical services. like food production. Right? So Commissioner John Hamm, not that John Hamm, different John Hamm, said in a statement, the inmates on strike include food workers who help prepare the prison meals. Meals are considered a critical service, the ADOC said. 2 relatives of inmates at Staten Correctional Facility told AL.com in emails today that prisoners there were not served lunch today. So that was the start, right? Kelly Betts, public information manager for ADOC, said all meals were happening, but that some might be delayed. Both sides of the wall held a rally outside the ADOC offices in Montgomery this morning. About 80 people attended the event. Speakers called for reforms to Alabama's sentencing parole laws. The group, which included former inmates and family members of inmates, called for improvements to conditions in prisons and medical care. Take care of them while they're in there, said Marquetta London of Montgomery, who said she has 2 nephews in prison. They're not taking care of those prisoners like they should. They're just not doing it. Speakers talked about the plight of inmate Castiello. What is that? Castellio?
Yes.
Castellio Vaughn.
Yeah.
Whose sister posted photos on Facebook that show him emaciated. This is the one that CJ talked about. A civil rights lawyer hired by the family said Vaughn's condition has deteriorated since he underwent surgery in August to remove a portion of his intestines as a result of gunshot injuries sustained prior to his incarceration. ADOC released a statement Saturday saying that Vaughn has received appropriate medical care. The ADOC said Vaughn has requested and received medical attention at least 11 times between July 30th and September 22nd, including major surgery and a stay of at least 17 days in an outside hospital. The ADOC released more information about Vaughn on Tuesday after he signed a waiver allowing more disclosure about his condition. The ADOC said Vaughn has repeatedly refused medical assessment and medical treatment after being treated at Jackson Hospital for complications of the surgery in August. The DOJ has alleged that conditions in Alabama's prisons violated the constitutional rights of the incarcerated men because of inmate-on-inmate violence and sexual abuse, excessive use of force by staff, and a failure to provide safe physical conditions. The state has acknowledged problems in its prisons, but disputes the allegation that conditions violate the constitutional prohibition on cruel and unusual punishment. I'm going to go with X for doubt. Just press X for doubt on that. Advocates at today's Both Sides of the Wall rally called for repeal of the state's Habitual Felony Offender Act, which results in longer prison sentences, including life without parole, sentences for some felons who have not committed a crime that caused a physical injury. The group called for the establishment of criteria that would guarantee parole for those inmates who meet the criteria. The rate of parolees granted in Alabama has dropped so sharply in recent years. They called for a streamlined review of parole for elderly inmates and those with serious medical problems. Other reforms they support, including reducing the maximum sentence for juvenile offenders from 30 years to 15 years, eliminating life without parole sentences, and applying sentencing guidelines that took effect in 2013 retroactively. Former inmate Eric Buchanan said his experience in prison taught him that some inmates belong there, but that others change through their own initiative and deserve another chance. There's some folks in there that will come out right now and do some horrible stuff, Buchanan said. I slept beside them, but I'm here advocating for some men that I know and watched whose lives changed. I know and watched the power of God work in their lives. I know some men in there who deserve a second chance. I knew some women at Tutwiler who have done enough time and they need to be free and be out here with their children and grandchildren now. I know this to be factual, so I'm advocating for them who have changed and those who want to get out here in society and make a real difference, who want to get out and have a real job and a real family and be a producer. The Alabama legislator and Governor Kay Ivey approved a plan to build 2 4,000-bed prisons, right? To replace some of the state's existing prisons, some of which the ADOC says are not feasible to renovate. Like, Lawmakers and the governor say the new facilities will be safer and be better equipped for healthcare and rehabilitation programs in the old prisons, but Buchanan noted that the new prisons won't be ready for years. The ADOC said they could be occupied in 26. We're talking about, could be. We're talking about 4 or 5 years from now having those buildings completed, but men are dying yesterday. Buchanan said, so we would like to see some type of relief for people who have been locked up for a substantial amount of years who deserve another chance. You're going to have enough men to fill those new prisons up so you can give some relief to the ones that are stuffed in these cans right now. Couldn't agree more on that. Closing thoughts?
Gail said this in the chat, though, hospitals.
Yeah.
Which
Yep.
we're not doing.
Well, and these prisons are also the biggest proponents of mental health care right now. Some of the only.
Right, but I think that's part of the problem is that, and this is kind of where the idea of defunding the police comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Because prisons now are essentially becoming, in a lot of ways, community centers.
Yeah.
In a very twisted way, or like I think more a homeless shelter, because people are getting in trouble specifically, for some type of shelter, but then prisons themselves are becoming hospitals, community centers, all these things into one facility. And you're not building enough. Well, the idea that you're saying that you should build more, I think in of itself is a problem, but you're packing these men and women in them. You're not planning to build any more, or at least you're taking your time to build any more. And meanwhile, the health and livelihood of these inmates are at risk. So it's kind of like, in a way, they're kind of getting the idea that they're saying it could be ready within the next 4 years just kind of implies to me that they're not intending to build these anytime soon. They're trying to kill them in there, So trying to stuff as many as they can, basically like a coffin, and just see if amount of them die, in that context. But so the idea that they're striking, good for them, and like I said, it's of course the cops are going to spin it to be like, oh, they're workers, but you're not paying them. They're essentially volunteers who you're forcing them to work to essentially take care of their own, and you're not treating them well, or at least with some decent basic human decency, to be able to at least live and do well there. But as I said, good on them to strike. And good on the community for coming out and in solidarity with them.
I agree. I hope there's more of this, honestly. I think you see a lot with what's happening economically right now. We're starting to get food shortages might be a thing in the near future. I think stuff like this, where the prisons are going to feel the brunt of that, probably more than.
And it's only going to get worse with crime. Food shortages. People not getting enough money. People are getting desperate. And crime is going to go up, and as a result, I'm sure prisons are going to be over, which in a way, it may be what the prison industrial complex may want to justify building more prisons. I'm sure that's part of it.
That's exactly what that all three of those articles were like. Oh, we're gonna build new ones, new ones.
So it's almost kind of like a perfect storm, coming out of the pandemic, of people getting in trouble to justify the idea of, one, funding the police more, but two, building more prisons. So, but the problem is they're not building them fast enough. So obviously they're going to try and stuff as many people as they can and just let them rot in hell in there, And for many of them, it could be, it's again, simple, like minor issues that don't need jail time for,
Yeah.
you know, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot more of that, you know, on the horizon, you know, if people are not necessarily getting out on the streets and kind of calling this out.
I agree.
But speaking of, I think this actually kind of a decent segue. So, as I said earlier, those of you who have been around, or if you are just coming in, welcome. Please like, share, subscribe, you know. We're trying to hit 1K. Like,
yeah, we're
by
close.
the end of the year. We're very
If you haven't
close.
subbed yet, please do.
So yeah, so we're very close. So yeah, so please help us so that hopefully by the holiday season we'll be able to be monetized, if not by the new year.
Yeah.
So with this network, so yeah, but that aside, so yeah, my rants this week is on Cori Bush. I think this is the first rant I did on her, and Reef kind of understand, like, I struggled with this last night. Like, I wanted to talk about it in light of her book, which I heard murmurs about for a while, that I probably since last year, that she was in the process of writing a book, and you know, it's out now. You can purchase it if you want to. And I had issues with it, and I didn't know how to necessarily process what my issue was, but I think I figured it out this morning.
Okay.
What my problem with the book, and by extension Cori, is. So this might be a little messy, but I think it will make sense to you all. Like, it'll be a little more cohesive, I hope. But to start, my boss,
President,
my boss, tweeted this back over the summer, which I actually bookmarked. But I think he got this from an orientation he was doing. But one of our wonderful thought leaders, Angela Davis, once said, "Radical simply means grasping things at the root." Hold on to that quote, and I'll come back to that later.
Cool.
So, actually, if you could pull the next slide, actually.
You might even be able to.
The thing is,
yay! There it is.
Oh, there we go. All right, so as I said, Cori Bush was very excited yesterday because her book is out for sale. And she tweeted, "I can't believe it. Finished copies of my book are here, and I got to hold it in my hands for the first time along with my sisters, Ayanna Presley and Rashida Tlaib. My book, The Forerunner, comes out, well, tomorrow, well, today, is out. A dream 30 years in the making. I hope you pick up a copy too." And as expected, a lot of people in this space, myself included, had some things to say. If you follow Cori, you could see, you know, and you could see what I said, you know, like, and Uncle Warren said something, RBN, some members there said something about this. And as I said, you know, like, I struggle with this because I knew, like, and especially from the article that I'm about to reference for this rant, the story is about her life so far. So it basically is an autobiography, you know, of, you know, her life up until she started Congress. And I don't want to bash Cori within the book in terms of what she went through personally, you know, prior to being in Congress. You know, I want to give some grace there for her because, as I told Reef off, you know, before we came live, I think one of the things that attracted people to Cori, you know, especially when she was running, you know, this round back in 2020, and why I was kind of, I remember being cautiously optimistic about her, I think out of the squad that we know, like, because I don't think they really put out their private lives like that. You know, Cori represents herself as one who is truly she is the working class. You know, she has said she never intended to go to Congress. She was asked to go into Congress in light of the activism she was doing, especially, you know, in 2020. And especially with the things that were happening in St. Louis at the time, regarding Black Lives Matter. And, you know, but as I told Reef, Cori in a lot of ways reminds me of my mom and other members of my family in what she has went through, which she has described in interviews, and I think in more recent interviews in as she's you know, selling her book. I don't want to go off on her for that, because she's entitled to speak her truth. And, you know, and she's been through a lot, and I sympathize with that. What I am going to do is, and I've realized that what I was doing was I was kind of combining both Cori, the woman, and her life experience, and Cori, the politician. So I think once I was able to make that separation, you know, in terms of who Cori is as a person versus who Cori presents herself to be as a politician, then I think like my block was a lot easier to kind of gather my thoughts around. But I want to focus on Cori, the politician.
Okay.
But how I think she's used her life as a shield, in a sense, in terms of her politics, and why in some ways that's problematic, and for me, disappointing. So I'm going to go to the next slide.
Yep.
So she did an interview with Cut, part of New York Magazine. Actually, if you can remove both screens, Reef, so I can read. So the title of it is The Pain and Glory of Cori Bush. In less than 2 years, the Congresswoman built a base of power in DC by wearing her hardships on her sleeve. Just 3 days after Cori Bush arrived in Washington, DC, as the first Black woman to represent Missouri in Congress, election deniers descended on the Capitol. The January 6th insurrection was convulsive in a way Bush couldn't fully fathom, yet she felt prepared. I wasn't afraid for my life or anything, she says. I come protest, it ain't no big deal. She was more concerned for her staff than for herself. I was like, I may go down, but I'm going to go down fighting using staplers. Oh, wait.
Staplers?
That's
my stapler?
A second. There we go. Staplers, printers, whatever was needed was going to have to fly through the air. She laughs, but it's serious. It's remembering this welcome to Congress that most Avenue H. Bush, draped in a red raglan sleeve tee with her signature acrylics, intimately punctuating her words over a video call. In that moment, she says, she remembered her promise to her district. I told the people of St. Louis, if you elect me, I'll be ready on day one. She kept her word, and that same day, she introduced her first piece of legislation directing the House Ethics Committee to investigate Republican Congress members who challenged Donald Trump's election loss and incited what she calls a domestic terror attack. I couldn't look at the fact that, oh, you're a freshman, you've been here for less than 72 hours, she says. It was, hey, we have the people with the know-how to get this done, and that's what we did.
Get what done?
A good question. She appeared on Rachel Maddow that night while the Capitol was on lockdown and spoke on the House floor. She didn't leave until 4:30 the following morning. Bush's name recognition shot up quickly. She's since become a star of The Squad, establishing a progressive platform that includes Medicare for all, a $15 federal minimum wage, reproductive rights, and criminal justice reform. In less than 2 years, she's created a base of power in an institution ruled by those with seniority and deep pockets by simply carrying out the duties she promised her community she would. Though she's been deemed controversial at times, she clashed with former President Obama over his comments that lawmakers could lose voters if they endorsed defunding the police. Bush's staying power became apparent when she breezed through August's Democratic primaries, which all but secured her second term. Marking how far the Congresswoman has come is a new memoir, The Forerunner, A Story of Pain and Perseverance in America, out on October 4th. The book is at once piercing and gripping, threading together wrenching tales from her journey to DC that illustrates Bush's grit and focus. While she's spoken before and often about her activism and pastoral and nursing backgrounds, in Forerunner, she's even more vulnerable, revealing the bad, ugly, mad parts of her life in hopes her colleagues and others in positions of power take note. Because she's a walking embodiment in the halls of Congress of the idea that anyone from anywhere can ascend beyond the limitations forced upon them, not everyone everywhere understands what those limitations are, what it's like to live on food stamps, to be uninsured with a medical condition, to work a $9 an hour job in adulthood, narrowly surviving, to know what single motherhood is like, the loneliness of it all, to not know where you'll live tomorrow, sleeping in your car with two babies staring up at you for answers you don't have, what it's like to be sexually violated, not once, but 3 times, by men you trusted, healing from abortions, navigating trauma. In Forerunner, Bush points to Bernie Sanders as a key influence. With his wild justifications and unapologetic manner, he's shown me that I didn't have to temper what I believe, even in a static environment, she writes. From Bernie, I learned that I could run as myself. He was the model she wanted to follow, she adds, because he believed that the kind of change I want to see in my community was not only possible, but also necessary, a moral mandate. She also credits her unflinching resolve to growing up in the church. In Bible study and Sunday school, she was reminded of the figure of the Forerunner, that person who blazes a clear path where there was none before. A Forerunner, she explains, endures life hardships and, with that understanding, strives to improve outcomes for others. Those who have worked with Bush describe her as authentic and principled and a justice seeker, someone who has experienced the pain her constituents deal with directly and brings that with her every day, fellow Progressive House member Ilhan Omar says. When you have fluency in your constituents' day-to-day struggles, you see problems with more urgency. We can second guess that. As she worked on her memoir, Bush tells me she was intentional about addressing attempts to shame her for the hurdles she overcame. During her run against Clay, for example, his team sent a mailer that questioned Bush's reliability. It noted that she had her nursing license suspended. True, she couldn't afford the renewal payment and writes that his campaign had no idea what it meant to be low income and resource poor, that these matters were the consequences of living in poverty. It also pointed to her free evictions, that these were the results of an assault by an ex, deliberating nurse school costs, and a landlord kicking her out because of her activism. So when the COVID-era federal eviction moratorium was set to expire before Congress went away for summer recess last year, Bush, now in a position of power, chose to channel those past pains into action. She saw the moment for what it was. Members of Congress are just disconnected because they can be, leaving the vulnerable to fend for themselves. She felt uncomfortable going home when many families in the district and across America can lose theirs in hours. I was trying to show myself that I belong, that I can do this work, she recalls. So it was just like push, 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 go, 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 go. Bush stayed behind, organized, and camped out on the steps of the Capitol. Other progressives joined in on the 5-day demonstration, including Omar, AOC, and Ayanna Pressley. Soon, Bush was on every local and national media outlet. Leaders down the road from the Capitol could no longer ignore her. She began having conversations with Biden, Kamala Harris, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, and representatives from the Treasury and the Progressive and Black caucuses. Bush tells me it was important for her to testify from her personal experience to what those 11.4 million renters were up against. If we don't tell Biden exactly what's happening for someone like him, who wasn't a homeless adult, someone needs to tell him what it's like, she says of her conversations with the White House. Just as a farmer needs to be able to have that conversation with the president to tell him what it's like to be a farmer over this part of the country and what this type of crop is with with this type of rain and blah, blah, blah. Someone has to tell him what that's like, because otherwise he won't know, and he can't really meet the needs of those folks if he doesn't know. The White House didn't respond to requests for comment for this story. Feeling pressure from the protests, Biden extended the temporary ban on evictions. The episode solidified Bush's stature as a reliable legislator, one who eventually dons the neat attributes that make Black women and girls across America tell her, "You look just like me," to which he tells them in varying ways, "I'm just like you." He was the first ever BLM activist turned member of Congress, being her full self, tattoo across her chest, acrylic nails, box braids, taking on the White House and party leadership, and winning.
Yep.
Through all of this, Bush emphasizes her focus hasn't shifted. Despite being the House's newbie, she's built a strong base of influence out of empathy and the first to stand in the gap for those who got her to DC. Their stories and struggles remind Bush of her duty to be their reflection in the people's house, to stand firm on their behalf. She is committed to bring real-life insights to colleagues, those in leadership and in the White House, who can have a tendency to legislate mechanically with the luxury of not knowing or neglecting the bank battles of everyday folks. The same ones Bush can never ignore because she bears the same scars. The people closest to the pain, she says, echoing an adage from her friend and colleague Presley, should be closest to power. So I didn't read the whole thing. I just pulled, I think, the most prominent parts. But in reading all of that, as I said, in reading this, I struggled because, as I said, I don't want to bash Cori for what she's gone through, you know. That wouldn't be right of me to do that. As I said, that's her truth, that's her story. I can't take that away from her. That being said, and I figured out that in this article and in the purpose of writing her book frustrated me, and I will explain why. Okay. So actually, if you can remove both screens.
Yep.
So we've talked a lot about activism and organization, mobilization over the last few weeks, I feel like, especially with, you know, Kwame Ture. This is a table that I received from Movement Matters, which is a nonprofit in DC, their affiliation with the teachers advocacy group that I'm a part of. We did this, we had this discussion, you know, as far as organization, what it means. I think it was last summer. And I remember this, so I want to teach you guys something. So if you look on the left column, you could see the types of organization. So direct service, self-help, civic engagement, advocacy, and organizing. So if you look at direct service, self-help, the focus of change, just to give a brief overview, the focus of those change is on the individual. So depending on which one you're looking at, direct service in relation to the existing power structure accepts the status quo, basically. So the role of the constituent is a passive one. So you just get whatever is given to you.
Right.
Self-help is the relationship, rejects existing power struggle, but doesn't try to change it. So the role of the constituent in this scenario is active development and delivering of services. So a little bit better. They're taking an active stance on their own. The following three get to more of the systemic. So civic engagement, the relationship is accepts the existing power structures. It's the status quo. So the role of constituent is both active participation in predetermined structures. So that's like, I can't think of a good example right now, but I think it would be like, you know, just being involved in what is existing. So it could be like, example, like being a part of DSA, for example. I think that would be like a good, like a well-known organization you're just a part of, you know, that's already existing. Advocacy is the relationship is accepts existing power structure but challenges its outcomes. So the role as a constituent is passive, which is attendance at rallies, etc. This is kind of what we talked about as far as mobilization. You know, you can challenge the outcome, but even I wouldn't say necessarily accept, but you don't kind of push into the power structure of what it currently is. So this is kind of what we describe as Kwame describes as mobilization, the idea like you center around issues, rallies. You do that thing or whatever for maybe, as he said, and we showed this quote clip on a couple of videos, like you get really hot for maybe a couple of days and then you sit down. So you just hot and bothered over an issue for a moment and then stop. Organizing is challenges existing power structure. So the role as constituent is active, which is development and implementation of campaign planning and actions. This is the one that we talk about on the left that we need to do more.
Yeah.
The problem that I was sharing with Reef off camera is I think generally when we get to organizing, we tend to, I think we often head into the advocacy realm a little bit too much. Like we are aware, we challenge the outcome of like things being like, for example, with Chris Smalls, you know, we challenge the idea that Jeff Bezos is shit, but he's not addressing the structure by which Jeff Bezos is allowed to exist and has his wealth. So his result right now, seemingly, is like going to rallies, doing interviews, talking about, you know, like Jeff Bezos is da-da-da, Amazon workers is whatever, you know, whereas what we are looking for is people who are willing to challenge the power structure. So just to clarify all of that, organizing is relationship building is important, essential entry point into organizing. Organizing is a collective effort that relies on numbers to create change. So as Kwame said, you can't be Superman in this work. You have to have people in this work alongside you.
Yeah.
Organization has a longer term focus. It's not just for a day or even a month. Sometimes it can take years. Organizing is about demanding power, not accommodation or access. So again, as Kwame has said, you know, the idea of organization, we don't want just to give us power. We're going to take it. We're looking to take power for ourselves and do better than what people who are enlisted in that power can do for us.
Yeah.
And then organizing develops leadership skills. So just a very basic overview of the different types of engagement there are. So you're probably wondering, okay, cool. How does this relate to Cori? Actually, you know what? I'm going to show you how this relates to Cori. So I'm going to show you a couple of clips. A lot of you are probably familiar with these clips. So the first one is where Max Blumenthal, this is at the Capitol. So remember, you know, in the article, it gave a glowing review of what she did at the Capitol last summer. But what they're not going to tell you, and what I'm sure Cori's not going to say, is what happened when Max Blumenthal challenges her in terms of, and asking her a question regarding Medicare for All in relation to the housing moratorium. So if you want to play it, Reef, we can check out what
that's
she
where
said
we
to
are.
him.
And I heard, like last night, there was a lot less people. It's great to see so many more people, but I heard there was an intense debate about the role of the squad and why the squad didn't leverage its vote for the speaker for Medicare for All vote, and why the squad, I mean, with the margin so narrow, and why the squad didn't
because
leverage its vote on the stimulus to get a $15 minimum wage. What?
No. So first, one thing that was said last night, which is something that's very true, and I wish we would have talked about that this was where your conversation was going, because we're talking about the rally for tonight. And I really would love to keep the conversation on what's happening.
I feel like it's all related to healthcare and the...
It absolutely is, but this is the thing. What was said last night is that this bill, Medicare for All, is not, no, there's no person on the squad whose bill that is. That is Bernie Sanders' bill in the Senate. It is Pramila Jayapal's bill in the House. It is not our bill. We cannot make that bill come to the floor. There is nothing that we can do legally to get the bill to the floor. We have
But Pelosi could have brought the bill to the floor.
We're good here, thank you.
Well, what? Well,
I'm sorry, man. We're fine at this.
Why can't she answer the question?
We're here to talk about the eviction.
But I feel like it's all about healthcare.
Thank you.
No, really appreciate that.
Really appreciate your time.
We're here for a reason. It's about the moratorium.
Well, why is that? I can't ask about Medicare for all.
But the Congresswoman has slept 1 hour. She's done a lot of labor.
I'm trying to get people out here too.
I respect your work.
I'm trying to do the same thing you all are doing.
Thank you for being here.
But why can't she could just answer it and then I go away? I'm not trying to like attack her or anything. I'm not trying to smear her.
We're happy to give you a contact and you can reach
But
out.
why is that issue, the Medicare for all vote, so like she was wrapping up her? But she was wrapping up her. I know she was wrapping up her answer. Then I was going to say thank you, everybody.
Need to see anymore, but you get the idea. So what Max was trying to do there, like he was trying to challenge Cori in regards to not just the housing moratorium as well, but a bigger issue and how it relates to, healthcare. Because obviously if people are going to be on the street, they're going to need healthcare, and one, she dodged it. But also if you notice, she was like, she gave every excuse as far as, like, I don't have the power to bring that to the floor, like it would be illegal, whatever bullshit she was saying. Well, Cori, you ran on Medicare for All, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this should have been a part of the push, and again, going back to the quote that we saw at the beginning of the segment, radicalism, or essentially being a revolutionary, is getting to the problem, to the root problem, So she was just focused on the housing moratorium, and there's a reason for that I'll explain later. But she was just focused on that issue, but not the why. And so it's very interesting. And again, I know she wasn't going to say it in this interview, like for a book, but this is the other side of Cori. She kind of dodged the bigger picture in terms of, what the moratorium might mean, if people are not essentially getting, care. So that's the first part. The second part, I know probably a lot of you are familiar with this, and probably one of the big reasons why essentially I am here and I am in a lot of ways. So we all know this clip. This kind of went viral last summer. Franco and I, shout out to Franco, we were at the steps. Both of us challenged AOC and the squad, when they won, seemingly, the housing moratorium being extended. And you guys know it, but we're going to play it.
What are you doing 5:30 p.m. on Saturday? How many days are you going to be here? Yeah, but that. But what about? And we said none of that. None of that matters. We're going to figure that out. But we're
what are you going to do?
So what
you asked us what we're going to do. What are you guys going to do?
Here's what we're going to do. The CDC just announced an eviction moratorium, and what we're here is for our reasons known and unknown. So our reasons known was to make sure that we extended this moratorium. That's what we're here to.
What about the 10%? What about the 10%?
Okay, we're gonna turn on some music now.
What about the 10%? We can't celebrate.
Damn right we can't celebrate, Collin. Damn right.
I mean, a lot of you are like, Collin, you did it. Actually, I got some heat from this a little bit, but I think the majority of people were like, good job, for calling out AOC, Franco as well. It's hard for me to watch. And I think going back to what I was saying, this is kind of why I felt frustrated, because I have a personal relationship with Cori, in this. And then I didn't post it here, but she came to the marches for Medicare for All. Surprisingly, I did take a picture of her, but it was the idea of like, you came at the tail end when we tweeted at you, we contacted you and every member of the squad to be involved with the organizing that we were doing on the ground, and you were dead silent, and the idea that Cori and AOC kind of dismissed our questions, which again relates the idea of like, you extended the moratorium, but what if people can't pay? They're still going to be out on the street. So what are you going to do? What are you going to do that's better? Like, what is your plan of attack for more? And I remember Sabi saying that Afeni, who also lives in DC, did have the opportunity to talk with AOC privately. And I'm not sure if it was Afeni directly, but I know just from out of all of this, the reason why they pushed for the moratorium to be extended, because if they push for more in terms of like loan forgiveness, like rent forgiveness and all of that, they knew that the establishment was going to say no. That was already made clear by Nancy Pelosi, but that was a no-go. So they went with the easy thing of calling for an extension of the moratorium in the guise of, oh, it looks like we're doing something. And then obviously, Cori getting the credit for it, to which I'm sure it kind of relates to this book, because now she got the notoriety, she got a little bit of, her name was a little more established. And then, that kind of, I'm sure that was kind of the jump off, for this book. So I think for me, I'm frustrated with Cori, because essentially this is a payday for her, in having this book. And again, I don't want to knock her for what she's talking about per se, but in terms of her activism, as she says, you can't be an activist and a politician at the same time. You cannot. Like, your job as a politician is to legislate. But what you should be doing is gathering the information and that unrest from activists on the ground who are challenging the establishment in terms of getting to the root cause of the problems that we have and using that energy to create legislation to make that push, in terms of changing the system. That's what essentially as within the Justice Democrats, that's what they were supposed to do. And they failed to do that. So I just see Cori having this book. It's kind of like, an easy way out for herself to kind of say, to kind of give the guise of, oh, because I'm relatable, I'm part of the working class, like I understand who you are. And so I'm going to write a book about it to kind of talk about all these false victories that I've had, in order to make some more money. So in the event, to kind of establish herself and to make her gain her generational wealth, but not considering us in the process. Like, I find kind of ironic that she's celebrating this book when we still don't have $15 million minimum wage. We still do not have universal health care. And I think it's kind of funny that people are not going to be able to buy this book because people can't eat.
Well, and it brings you to, words of Jesse Jett, which Cynic so gladly shares for us. So fuck all these progressives who can speak on revolution. Once they empty all your powder out and spit on all your fuses, I prefer to judge a leader not by quality of tweets, but the 6-figure book deal she chooses. So that's from Love Your Prison. You'd be able to find that on Jesse's Bandcamp.
We linked to it in the description if you wanted to take a look. And any one of Jesse's albums and spoken word pieces, you can check him out there. So shout out to our brother Jesse. And and I think this is this was honestly extremely hard for me. And Reef saw me struggling with this last night as I was prepping this, because I didn't want to necessarily talk about it. But once I made the decision, and then I kind of was like trying to work through it. I think once I got to the idea of I could separate the person for who they are and separate the politician from what they are, then it became a little bit easier. And then things started to click for me. But in closing, I think what frustrates me about Cori is that because of her position, her background, she should know better as far as more so what the working class is going. She's been through it. And she should know as an activist what it means to push this system. An activist is meant to challenge the system. An activist is not meant just to talk about issues. An activist is meant to talk about the problems that are in the society and how we can work towards ideas and organize around the ideas of how we can seize power for ourselves in an effort to make it better. Cori knows that. And instead, because she's concerned, and this is speculation, I think it would be very much spot on, she's concerned about her position in Congress because she hasn't had any real wins legislatively. And I would argue, if she's had any wins legislatively, she doesn't need a book. Her work would speak for itself. But because she hasn't really done anything, then having a book can give the veneer of, oh, I did something. I did the March at the Capitol and I talk about these issues that are popular, by my, again, to kind of gain generational wealth for herself so that in the event, if she's ever out of Congress, she's good. She will still have this book and probably she will have a lot more and being able to do speaking tours and all that at our expense, basically, because she hasn't, the article, she understands what it's like living on $9 an hour, but we still have, but our federal minimum wage is $7. She's talked about how she's had abortions, but she didn't push the president as far as why didn't you
ratify? Yeah.
She talked about how she was in student loan debt. She didn't talk about how schools, colleges, and universities are designed to rip us off, and how the student loan industrial complex is ripping us off. These are the issues that she should be speaking to, but she's doing the bare minimum right now because she's afraid of losing her position. And so that's the frustration that I have with Cori as far as a politician. As a woman, and as someone who I've met and talked to briefly, I respect the fact, and she said she didn't want to go to Congress. She was asked to be. And so I feel like for me, more of that frustration is this was your destiny, essentially, because you were asked to be in the position. It's kind of like, Reef, you asked me to do this, and I told you initially, no, I didn't want to be on INN News. I didn't have the time to be on INN News, but you saw something in me in terms of wanting to talk about issues that I wouldn't be able to talk about on Mukwano that would limit me to talk about other things that I am passionate about. And you wanted me to have this platform. And I am very appreciative of you for seeing that and pushing me to do this. And so because of that, for me, like, I take this seriously, and I want to make sure that we're giving you guys the right information. We're giving you guys, you know, the idea of like, you know, we want to speak truth, but we also want to highlight the stories that people are not necessarily talking about in the space. And I'm very proud of the work, I think, especially on INN, that we've been able to do over the past year. And so knowing that responsibility, I don't take this lightly. And so with Cori, and we had a love letter, Chris, I'm going to write to you, Cori. It's your turn. Do better. You know better. You've been through it. And as you're going into your second term, I challenge you to be better. Because really right now, you have a choice to make. It's either your position or serving us. Thinking about your book for at least a year kind of tells me where your mind was at. You weren't focused on us. You were focused on your career. You were focused on your riches. But what about ours? And so I hope, she's probably not going to see this, but I hope, you know, as she goes into her second term, that she's able to do right by the people that she claimed that she went into Congress for, and push for this towards the system. Don't push about all these issues that everyone else is talking about. You're not better than any politician. You know, speak to the power that you want to give, that you say you want to give to us. Speak to that.
Yeah, I agree. You know, if you want unity, you need to earn it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. There have been plenty of activists who've been pushing you, and as you saw, dismissed.
Yeah.
You know, you can't do that. You can't do that to people who
there's so much. There's so much to do. Well, it's just there's so much to do. There's like there's so much stuff you have to keep up with to even be able to do, like, see the landscape for where it needs to be, right? And you have to do it on a global scale. You know, it's kind of ridiculous. And if you're not following people like this guy, Jordan Schachtel over at the Dossier, I know he does some other stuff, but some of the stuff can slip through your cracks for sure. Like, I doubt Cori Bush is even paying attention to this, especially with them pushing Green New Deal stuff that this can be slipped into, you know. I feel like you need to be a little careful, you know. So this is a story all about how the Federal Reserve is using the green transition as a pretext to build an American social credit system, right? So, and they're using Europe's model as like a pilot exercise, essentially. So have you heard anything about these social credit systems, Collin, like in China and things like that? You've been paying attention?
I haven't really been paying attention to this, and I didn't read this article beforehand, so this will be more learning for me.
Yay! So, I get to be teacher.
Yeah, you get now, so yeah.
So, the Federal Reserve has offered a green light for the first component of an agenda dedicated to turning the American financial system in a complete censorship and surveillance regime. And all indications are that they intend to install further intrusions on liberty in the U.S. dollar system under the guise of saving the planet from climate change. The Dossier reported last week on the Federal Reserve's pilot exercise that is slated to both begin and conclude in 2023. In the piece, we discuss how what was become commonly referred to as ESG, or the climate change agenda, or the green transition, is acting as a Trojan horse for the continuing centralization and the increasing of surveillance in the American financial system. Excuse me. Across the West, this movement is now acting as the chief catalyst for the implementation of Chinese Communist Party-like social credit score systems, right? So, to continue this crucial conversation, here's some more detail about how we can expect this pilot exercise to move forward in the coming months. In all likelihood, the Fed will follow in the footsteps of the Euro system. So in January 2022, the European Central Bank, which manages the euro, launched its own climate stress test. They quickly resulted in July 2022 Climate Action Plan to include climate change considerations in the euro system's monetary policy framework. So here's that release. So the ECB takes further steps to incorporate climate change into its monetary policy operations, right? And this is straight from the European Central Bank. Over the span of just 7 months, the ECB transformed their monetary policy to support the green transition of the economy in line with the EU's climate neutrality objectives. In order to decarbonize the European economy, the ECB will proceed to limit the share of assets issued by entities with a high carbon footprint. I'll read that again. Limit the share of assets issued by entities with a high carbon footprint. The ECB will... Right.
Not...
But that they get to dictate how much...
Not get rid of it.
Right. And that they get to limit whoever they say is doing, you know, high carbon footprint. You know what I'm saying? Right. Like, and they get to decide how much they limit. So the ECB will also limit the borrowing power of institutions that are not considered carbon compliant. The Europeans now suddenly have a green social credit score system. Will the Fed follow suit? To get a sense of the Fed's commitment to the climate hoax, we can review a prominent Federal Reserve official speech last month at the Brookings Institution in Washington, D.C. Many consider the left-wing policy shop as the most influential think tank in the United States. I don't necessarily agree with Schachtel's thing on the climate hoax. I do think climate definitely is I don't know how he's using this specifically. Right. But I mean, I think it's one of those classic, like, yes, climate change is real. Yes, there's definitely going to be environmental problems caused by it. And it's definitely caused by carbon emissions that we continually pump out. But, like, it doesn't mean that any of these things need to be implemented to deal with that. Right? Like, I'm under the opinion of, at least. You know, especially when the U.S. military produces more carbon emissions than, like, a lot of things. You know, it's a top-down problem. The big corporations get away with doing it, and they're going to fork all this onto the bottom percentage anyway. You know, don't use those plastic straws, kids. You know? But, yeah, so to get us into the Fed commitment, right. So this is their, like, hour-long, like, Michael Barr, right? So Vice Chair for Supervision Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System, and David Wessel, Director of the Hutchins Center on Fiscal and Monetary Policy. So this is definitely a fucking weird think tank nonsense, right? And he's just governor of the Fed, essentially, right? But just in case you wanted to, like,
the job of every worker.
I mean, they had a whole fucking hour-long video that I'm not going to play for you, but I will copy the link address there and put that in chat if anyone wants to actually go through it themselves and find any good snippets of terribleness that I'm sure is in here. So if it would just let me go past the video that I just turned off. Anyway, so they pulled some of this out in the article. So Barr writes or says, as our nation and the world grapple with how to respond to climate change, banks are increasingly focused on the risks that climate change brings to their balance sheets, said Fed Vice Chair Michael Barr, an institutionally progressive Biden admin appointee. I think those are oxymorons myself, that phrase, but yeah. He added, emphasis in bold, the Federal Reserve is working to understand how climate change may pose risk to individual banks and to the financial system. The Federal Reserve's mandate in this area is important, but narrow focused on our supervisory responsibilities and our role in promoting a safe and stable financial system. Barr, who has served as an advisor to the Gates Foundation, and the Clinton Foundation, and worked in government as a top Obama administration Treasury Department official, continued. In the near term, we intend to work with the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency and the FDIC to provide guidance to large banks on how we expect them to identify, measure, monitor, and manage the financial risks of climate change. In addition, we are considering how to develop and implement climate risk scenario analysis. In that regard, next year, we plan to launch a pilot microprudential scenario analysis exercise to better assess the long-term climate-related financial risks facing the largest institutions. So then on Thursday, the Fed announced that it was launching its pilot exercise on climate. So if it mirrors the Eurosystem process, the Federal Reserve's pilot exercise will indeed become the first step for the framework of a Federal Reserve imposing a social credit score system attached to the US dollar. The banks are arguably incentivized to go along with the program, as those who go along with the agenda become the ultimate middlemen for all US banking activity. So the New York Times, a major journal for the green transition, commented that the exercise would improve a Federal Reserve that often lagged behind its global peers when it comes to talking about and coming up with a plan for policing risks related to climate change. Reuters, another pro-climate catastrophe publication, cheered the pilot exercise, writing that the potential effects of climate change, namely through rising sea levels, worsening floods and fires, could destroy trillions of dollars of assets around the globe. The banks involved in the exercise, Bank of America, Citigroup, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan Chase, Morgan Stanley, and Wells Fargo, hold a combined majority of all U.S. banking assets, meaning a Fed decision would likely have the top-down effect of crushing small and community banks that do not have the resources to comply with its monetary edicts.
I was waiting to see where the shoe was going to drop.
I
was just waiting for it.
It's all over. The shoes dropped all over this. So, if the big banks complied with this hyperactivist Federal Reserve, which more than ever needs a manufactured crisis to take weight off its monetary policy failures, the American social credit score system will be here a lot sooner than many project.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I just noticed we're looking to protect the banks. We're looking to protect each other in light of climate change. We basically want to protect our assets in case the world burns. That's basically that's basically what I'm getting for this article. It's like, where's the care for the people? Where is the care and concern of normal people?
Insurance companies.
Fuck y'all. Fuck Chase. Fuck Bank of America. Fuck Wells Fargo.
Yes.
I don't care.
Yeah.
You guys can rot in hell for all I care. Basically, you have more than enough money. You know? Right. Where's the investment in the people?
Well, and this is directly again, like, people don't, you have to look at this as like, look, this is in congruency with a lot of other policy that we've talked about previously on shows like How Did We Miss That, where insurance companies are no longer providing catastrophe relief, like, due to financial risk for them. Right? Tie that with what's happening, that farmers in the Netherlands have been protesting, and in Germany been protesting, and where the farmers who are directly the cause of like producing food are getting sanctions applied on them for things like carbon emission and things like that that keep them from making a living. And you best believe that this is going to continue to be part of the problem there. Right. Where if you're a farmer here in America, you might possibly have your assets frozen.
Right. I'm just thinking also in terms, we reported, was it here? Yeah, it was on here. Like, I think over the summer, about the idea of like electric cars that, a lot of
Yeah.
the parts have to be you can't
Mind
like
and yeah.
you can't even get
The
essentially
carbon
get
emission for living.
high,
Yeah.
but then like certain parts, in order for cars to be like a thing,
As opposed to
you can't buy.
They won't build infrastructure that would make things more efficient to move people. They don't build cities for people to like the infrastructure is just terrible. The city planning is terrible. Like all of that forcing us to rely on like fossil fuels to literally go to work, come home. Like
It's a way, I just kind of see the connection. It's a way to incentivize themselves in being green and
Yeah.
potentially like, oh, we're saving the environment and all this stuff, essentially to protect their asses and assets, again, at our expense, because I'm sure they're going to promote, I could see it now. It's the idea of like, Pete Buttigieg was pushing like for people to buy electric cars. I'm sure that's going to be a part, like stuff that. I'm sure it's going to be kind of forced down our throats to do.
And sanctions and taxes on top of that for emissions.
I'm sure like if we have,
they've talked about climate lockdowns have been talked about with like the WEF, who's been pushing a lot of this like policy, which we know they control policy, right? And they're the ones who talk about it openly, right? Especially when we've looked at before the the Council for Inclusive Capitalism. A lot of their big stuff was over climate problems. And it's almost like using climate problems to, it's like the rich know that the time of the world burning is coming and they better make sure their ducks are in a row,
Here's the thing with this. I wouldn't necessarily have a problem with this, especially in like maybe in something like public transportation, for example, like, which is needed. Like, I wouldn't necessarily have a problem with it, given like how I think generally in this country, public transportation is shit anyway, but I think in terms of like the planning around like like you probably saw this on Twitter today, but like in DC, our subway system, they basically replaced the gates that are a lot more electronic, that you can use your phone in order to pay. But the gates are so freaking low that people are hopping over them. Like they spent millions of dollars to replace the gates only for people to do variations. So now as a result, like they're trying to crack down on people by basically saying, oh, we're going to target you if you hop the fence now, that we're going to start charging you. Talking a little bit about, oh, we need to pilot, but you've already wasted the money, like getting these new gates. And now you're trying to spend more money in order to maybe upgrade, if not maybe replace those.
Right.
So it's like, so in a way, like I could see how potentially how that can work in like certain industries, but except that these industries are just so shit and corrupt. Like it's never going to work out for like the working class.
Well, it's like, I mean, while the banks are trying to save their assets, meanwhile, like, we can't afford school lunches still.
Right. And, like we did a report on this, I think back in May, that due to the pandemic, essentially schools were getting universal lunches federally, like there was a waiver, but that waiver expired in June. And now we are resulting in like, we still have food shortages, supplies, like we still, you know, people are not making the money that they're used to. You know, we're still in a pandemic and people are struggling, and we just resorted back to the means tested, you know, like you have to pay for lunch or have a reduced lunch, or you have a thingy lunch, but you have to fill out paperwork for that, and it's just a lot of red tape, you know, to ensure that kids are getting the lunch. Like, it's just a mess, like, speaking anecdotally. So this is just kind of a follow-up to that story, since we reported on it. And as I said, this is this will probably end up being another rant, but for me, more tied to work, and this is personal for me since, you know, I'm a teacher and I experiencing this right now, and I work in an affluent public school. But school lunch is too costly for a growing number of families. Will White House pledge help? The Biden administration just laid out a strategy to expand free meals to 9 million more students by 2032.
Yeah.
9 million more by 2032.
Mm-hmm.
How's that going to help all kids?
Or the kids that need food now?
Right.
By 2032. By 2030. So when would that be? Is that after? Hold on. I just want to do math here for a second. Biden's administration, who will end, right, but his first term,
assuming that Democrats will be in office then,
will end in 24, right? Like, and then let's say, dear God, I hope not, that like he has a second term that would still only go to like
2028.
2028, and then
and we will probably have, continuing the fuckery that we have right now, it'll be guaranteed that we'll have a Republican president. This will be worse, or
right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and they will cut this immediately.
Even if it's a pittance, they would still, like, you know.
No, we don't want it.
Yeah.
You know, but then again, the world might be just burning within the next decade. But
yeah,
you know,
we should be able to feed everyone for free, let alone like.
Right. But to continue, the end of universal free school meals has left a growing number of families in a financial quandary, unable to keep up with school lunch payments, yet unable to qualify for free or reduced meals. A flood of families have applied for a price break now that school meals cost money for the first time since the early days of the pandemic, and sky-high prices of other essential constrict parents' budgets. Many families are within $100 of the modest limit for qualifying for free or reduced price meals, according to school nutrition directors. I cried a lot with families, said Angie Ritchie, nutrition services supervisor of Roseville area schools in Minnesota. I had to tell one family of 6 that they were $33 over.
Oh, God.
Jesus Christ.
That's just $33. Okay.
$33 over for a family of 6.
Yeah.
A dozen school nutrition directors from districts large and small, urban and rural, wealthy and low income, told NBC News they had to reject applications from a mother whose insulin price rose significantly, a father who lost his job during the pandemic has found only part-time work since, and a mother of 5 whose only income is disability payments because she has cancer, among others. The Biden administration last week announced a years-long goal of making universal school meals permanent, but requires the approval of a divided Congress, and advocates are pushing for immediate action. Wait, pause.
Okay.
Reef, who controls the House?
Republicans.
Allegedly, though.
I mean, what's the shit? It's the I know the name now. Like the proletariat, but that's not it. It's some other tariat. You know what I'm saying?
Right, but it's like this will end up being another rant. But like, you know, because I just got heated just now just reading this. But like, Democrats have control of the House,
Yeah.
the Senate,
Parliamentarian. The
You're telling
parliamentarian.
me that they
That's it.
cannot band together for something so simple as making sure kids are eating.
Yeah.
You have to like.
This should be priority number one. Like, where's
the
your
approval
priorities?
Of a divided Congress, who it's basically divided amongst them. I think in a lot of ways they gave
It's divided amongst themselves. Yes. Yeah.
It's divided
Yeah.
up within the old party essentially. Because
Such a fucking good way
Republicans
to
are
put that.
a non-issue. So it's not like, and so like I think the article is alluding that it's Republicans. No, it's divided among themselves.
Yep.
You know, they gave away the game here by saying that. Anyway, the White House strategy starts by expanding access to free meals to 9 million children by 2032. While anti-hunger experts lauded I would have done that, they also said many families could not wait for help.
Yeah. How are you going to help them now?
Right. These changes toward expanding. Oh,
sorry.
Wait. Yeah. So
You hit it. My bad. Go ahead.
Okay. Got it. So thanks. These changes towards expanding access to all students need to happen ASAP, said Laurie Atkins, president of the New School Nutrition Association, a trade organization representing 50,000 school nutrition employees. Some kids are coming to school with no food from home and no money. Discussions about the cost of lunch are now commonplace in school cafeterias, said Angie Branch, child nutrition director at Gooding School District in Idaho, who also leads the Idaho School Nutrition Association. I've never had as many children say, "Oh, I can't eat, I don't have money," Branch said, adding that students still receive lunch even if they cannot pay. As children, they shouldn't have to be bothered by that.
Yeah.
In Charian, Pennsylvania, high school senior Marshall Trost had a hard time justifying the $2.55 price of a school lunch because he knows his family budget is tight. The car broke down before they found out school would be charging for meals again, and Marshall, 17, says he sometimes skips lunch so he isn't adding to the burden. There's a point where you can get used to being hungry, he says. On days where he doesn't eat lunch, he uses change he finds around the house and purchases a small bag of chips from a nearby gas station convenience store after school instead.
That's fucked.
He tries to ignore his hunger at school in those days. I'll be honest, Marshall says, sometimes it does get a bit distracting in class. Who qualifies for free lunch now? With universal school meals over as of June, the threshold for qualifying for discounted meals has now returned to pre-pandemic rules in most of the country, at or below 130% of the federal poverty level, and between 130 and 185% of the federal poverty level for reduced school meals. This school year, a family of four earning $36,075 a year or less is eligible for free meals, and a family of four earning $51,338 or less is eligible for reduced price meals. The price of school meals varies across the country. According to Agriculture Department most recent data available, which is from the 2016 to 2017 school year, school lunch costs an average of $2.57. For a family with two kids, that would mean lunch would cost $5.14 a day, or $925.20 for a 180-day school year. For a family with an income of $52,000 a year, it becomes a significant expense, especially given that Moody's and Analytics has found that the cost of basic necessities is up $460 per month compared with a year ago. Many have expected meals to be free for another school year, me included, but Congress did not extend the waiver, with Republicans reporting opposed it because of the approximately $11 billion price tag. But yeah, we're able to send money to Ukraine, no problem.
No
right?
problem. No problem.
Nonetheless, a majority of Americans are in favor of universal school meals. 63% of voters support legislation. That's honestly the fact that it's 63%, I don't buy that statistic. But moving 63% of voters support legislation that would make free school meals permanent, available to all students, according to the Hunger Group Food Research and Action Center.
Yeah.
Those in favor acknowledge it requires a hefty funding, but says it should be a priority. Kids getting fed should not be political, said Billy Beach, nutrition director at Adele DeSoto Minburn Community School District in Iowa, and the School Nutrition Association of Iowa president. Stop-gap measures for those who cannot pay. If students cannot pay for school lunch, that doesn't mean they are denied food. In recent years, most districts eliminated lunch shaming policies and feed children the same meal as everyone else, then contact their parents to alert them to unpaid meal balances. The kindness comes at a cost. Some districts have seen their meal debt balloon. Heather Plain, child nutrition director at Bonneville Joint School District number 3093 in Idaho, said the district incurred more than $6,000 in meal debt within the first week of school. Part of the problem was not everyone knew school meals cost money again. The district has received 3,200 applications so far for free and reduced lunches among its more than 13,000 students. Plain said she found it frustrating to need to do paperwork again after 2 years of being able to serve free meals without it. It really becomes exclusionary, she says. Gathering families to fill out paperwork is not always easy. Many are busy and some are worried about sharing private information, said Krista Hamilton Neal, Nutrition Services Director of Stillwater Public Schools in Oklahoma. My great fear is that someone is not applying because it's going to cause a problem with their citizen status, she said, even though immigration status does not affect eligibility and applicants cannot be deported based on the form. Actually, I never thought of that, to be honest, that some families who are immigrants are concerned about that.
Yeah.
For Haleyville City Schools in Alabama, where the number of students to qualify for free or reduced meals is 71%, meal debt hovers around $75, said Emma Ann Hallman, child nutrition and president-elect of the Alabama School Nutrition Association. This is in large part thanks to donors in the community who volunteer to pay off meal debt, something that often happens in other districts too, but that's not sustainable or scalable. All 12 nutrition directors who spoke to NBC News said the ideal solution would be bringing universal school meals back immediately. They ride the bus for free, they get the books for free, Plain said. Let's just feed our kids. We've proven that we can do it. With universal meals over on the federal level, states step in. While most places have returned to pay meals, 5 states continue to offer universal school meals. Others offer free breakfast for all students. So basically the ones in orange, they have permanent universal meals. So that's right now California and Maine. Is there anything down south? No. And then the ones that are dark blue, proposed bill for permanent. The light blue is for this academic year only. So this is Nevada, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and then the rest of the gray.
Yeah, everything in gray are no longer. Jesus Christ.
That's sad.
That's rage-inducing.
Right.
Like, especially with the economy the way it is right now.
Right. Actually, no, I'm just going back to the bottom. Massachusetts and Vermont offer free meals this year while proposing bills for permanent universal meals. Connecticut is offering free meals to all students for the first several months. Okay.
Right, yeah, like several months.
Okay.
Oh my God.
Jennifer, a New Hampshire mom of a 4th grader who asked to be identified by first name only to protect her child's privacy, says she wishes her state was among those who had taken action. On disability because she can no longer work due to an autoimmune condition, she was shocked to see that her disability payments plus child support from a recent divorce disqualified her daughter for free or reduced price lunch. Her daughter prefers school lunch, but it's more cost-effective to pack a lunch from home, which is typically a sunflower butter and jelly sandwich, applesauce, and a Go-Gurt yogurt tube. While anti-hunger advocates say the goal is securing nationwide universal school meals, they have proposed compromises. One is raising the threshold for those who qualify for free and reduced price meals nationwide, a change that could be especially helpful for applicants in places with a high cost of living, something that the application does not take into account.
Pause, go back. Real quick. So where was it? Okay. What about Collin? What about the 10%? I mean, this is a lady who makes just barely too much. She's on disability, and she just went through a divorce and is getting like child support.
Right.
Can't work due to an autoimmune disease.
Right. This is why means tested anything is bullshit.
It's
bullshit because it doesn't account for all these idiosyncrasies of people and life that would otherwise, if under normal senses, that they able to pay or do certain things that they can't.
We're fucked.
Basically, Missy. Yes, we are. Yeah, we're fucked, and we're going to continue to be fucked. Another is eliminating the reduced price category so kids receive a free meal instead, something that was proposed for this school year, but ultimately cut from legislation that extended other nutrition waivers. Senator Rand Paul pushed for the return of the reduced price category. A spokesperson for Paul said in an email, "Spending money we don't have causes inflation that disproportionately hurts low income." Shut the fuck up. Families are already hurting, especially if they're on the cusp of qualifying, said Lori Danella, Director of Nutrition Services for Lee's Summit R7 School District in Missouri. "I wish there was some way to help when those families just don't quite make it," she said. "I've shed more tears this year than I have in my 24 years of food service."
Like,
what the fuck?
Right. Just as an anecdotal story, last year, and keep in mind for folks, like I live in DC, but I work at a public school in an affluent area of DC. Like last year when we had the lunch waiver, dude, it was so much easier just to take, like, families can have, and these are families that are well-to-do, like for all intents and purposes, you know, they could afford, like, I'm not going to make the assumption for all of them, but for many of them, they could afford, you know, to pay, you know, for school lunches for many of them. Like, we don't have that many students at my school that qualify for reduced or free lunches, but it was just so much easier for families because it's like, it gave them more flexibility. Like if something happened or like if there was an emergency that they couldn't offer their child like a home lunch like normal, then they can have the resort to the school lunch. And it was totally fine. There was no paperwork. We were able like to get lunches for kids who like might forget a lot easier, especially for my kids who are pre-K, who sometimes might forget to tell us, "Oh, I need a school lunch." It was just so much easier just to give it to kids who needed it. And now that we're back to the system, it's a lot more rigid. And like, you know, like in the mornings, like when I do the lunch count, I'm like terrified because like, if I mess up, that means it fucks up the food service system for that one child who, if I forget, or if they forget that they need a school lunch. And so like it's just more painstaking for me, and just generally in terms of like filling out the paperwork, and then like they have to account for making sure that every kid who asks for school lunch, we can't give any extra, basically, is basically what it's come down to now. Whereas for the last couple of years, we didn't have that concern. It was just so much easier. Like just give everyone kids lunch. If they want it, they can get it. And if they don't need it, they don't need to have it. But like all this bullshit as far as filling out forms and then having to prove your income and then like, you know, it's just so much more of the bureaucracy and the red tape that's just so unnecessary. And actually, I'm going to go off on Jamal Bowman for a second because dude was a former principal, and like I saw that he was tweeting, you know, in terms of like having plant-based lunches at schools, which is not necessarily a bad thing, fine, but like how about we get to the root of the problem again and being like, can we offer every kid a lunch? You know, like just give them a lunch, and we can talk about the extra stuff later, like plant-based or what if it was whatever. But like, can we ensure that every child is able to get food when they go to school, please? So like, again, going off on the squad and like for Joel Bowman, especially like we're a fucking teacher. This should be like a slam dunk for you to push for legislation like that. And I actually checked his Twitter to see if he's made a push, you know, as far as universal school lunches. Like I think Ilhan Omar had back in the spring, and she was making the call, you know, like we need to do something now. We need to do something now. And now the thing is expired. So I don't know.
You don't know. It sounded like you knew. Dude, that story frustrates me so much. Just seeing that like graphic of just all that light gray of that's where your kids can't eat.
Right.
Like that was maddening.
Yeah, but again, it just goes to prove the inaction of the squad. Going back to Cori again, it's just kind of like you're speaking to the issues, but not to the problem. You need to call out the problem in order for the problem to be healed. You know, I'm kind of paraphrasing what Malcolm X has said regarding, you know, like policy, you know, legislation, whatever. But like, but yeah, kids are not eating.
Yeah.
You know, this 17-year-old is so worried about his family, he gets chips. Even in that, it's not healthy.
The other child was like barely a peanut butter sandwich and like a Go-Gurt. Like,
that's not much either, honestly.
I mean, like, but it's just the fact of like, they have no options. And this is, finally, they just have to like, I don't know. It's just, let alone the failing infrastructure of the classrooms, no teachers.
Something about it is not necessarily cheap now either.
No.
I mean, peanut butter and jelly used to be the cheap option. Like, that was the bare minimum of what you get, like, for a cheap meal.
Yeah.
Now, sunflower butter, even peanut butter is not, and like in certain schools you can't have nuts, so you can't have peanut butter. So you have to have sunflower butter as an alternative, but that's not even cheap now either. Like, so it's just like,
I mean,
there really are no options for kids anymore.
When the kids are bringing sardines and crackers for like lunch at school, but you should probably be thinking about how to get them like normal food, you know?
You know, and we can have the discussion like, you know, like school lunches are basically prison food. Yeah, I mean, that's a discussion for another time. And yeah, it's definitely a valid question in terms of like how we can have school lunches that are filling, but at the same time, you know, like make sure that students are healthy and that they're able to eat it and enjoy it. You know, like that's another discussion for another time. But can we ensure at least at minimum that children are getting food at least to eat? And then we can talk about all this extra stuff from there after the fact. You know, like, but people like, again, Joel Bowman is talking about, oh, let's have plant-based lunches. Fine, but not everyone is going to be able to eat it.
Yeah.
So you got
how much you want to bet?
All wrong.
How much you want to bet you're going to hear stories of teachers paying for kids' lunches.
Oh no, I'm
or bringing food. Yeah,
that happens.
More than once.
Yeah, like that happens in certain schools. Like like teachers out of the kindness of their heart, and they make no money, are offering to give students money in order just so they can eat.
Yeah,
like that shouldn't need to happen at a school.
Yeah, and I don't need kids that are hangry. That's already going to be difficult.
Right.
But yeah, we talked about a lot. If you missed it, we'll have clips up. No,
normally we try and end on
an hour 32. We're doing good.
I think this is good for a couple of hours, but
yeah.
I was just saying that we try and end on somewhat of a positive note. I think we need to offset like the depression.
Like
the depression, how depressive this episode was, and like try and get like actual like a little more uplifting stories next week. I think we definitely need to commit to that because we've been kind of like, but I think it kind of makes sense given the state of affairs in the world right now. But I just feel very depressed right now, man. Like
I feel you.
Like
yeah.
It just makes me mad that the people in power who said, "Oh, we're going to work on your behalf," are not doing the work. And people are shitting on us when we call on their heroes for not doing the work.
Yeah.
So it's like, you shouldn't be attacking us. We can't do anything. You should be attacking them and talking to them as far as what are they doing, but I don't know. But
I'm Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
Stop it. Get some help.
They need so much. They need so much. But anyway, tomorrow is Thursday. I'll be meeting with I think Oz to go over some streaming stuff for the Assange event, which is the 8th, right? People should go check that out. Misty's GoFundMe is still pinned to her her Twitter. If you want to go find that at Starchasm Stardust, should be there.
I think she said she might have
met the goal, but she deserves extra. She asks for nothing.
So please support Misty, if you can. If you're able, if you're in the DMV area, or if you just want, it's a 3-day weekend for some of us.
Yeah.
If you're able to come out on Saturday, even if you can't, check the Assange website. There definitely are other cities where they're having some other stuff in affiliation with this, of what's happening in London. So definitely, we should probably try and find a link to that as well. I think probably Action for Assange, I would guess.
Yeah, if you look up, I think it's candlesforassange.com. They should do like that. That scours the net for all the Assange events. So you should be able to find info for that there, as well as just go sub to Misty and Sarcasm Stardust on Twitter. But I think the hashtags are Surround DOJ, Surround Parliament, and Hands Off Assange. If you want to search for those hashtags on Twitter, you'll probably be able to find info there. Hopefully people will go see Collin while he's there. Friday night.
Friday night
we have Indie's Indie Media Award introduction, so please go check that out. That'll be here on INN as well. I'm going to try to get a Reef After Dark with him after that, just as a little after party for that.
Do you have a guest lined up or no?
Indy, if you want to come on, you're welcome to. I can set up for that if you're down.
Yeah. I haven't done a episode in a minute, so since it's the summer, so I can definitely come on.
Eventually, I gotta get.
I'll probably be just hanging with you guys, honestly, for the awards and that. So it makes sense. It'll just make a night of it.
Yeah. At some point, I need to get Mona on something here soon. You know.
No, actually, Mona, I have plans for you. Like,
okay.
I have plans for you. We need to do a stream specifically on teachers. I haven't forgotten that. Like, I know we talked about this maybe over a year ago. I definitely want to have a stream where we have teachers, especially teachers on the left, have a kind of similar thing that we did, you know, with GJ Joe Nice talking about one issue as far as education.
Yeah, I'm down for that.
How it affects people on the left. I definitely want to have that. So,
yep.
You know, so well, I haven't forgotten. So, let me get myself situated and I'll contact you or whatever and see if you'll be willing to come on the stream with me and maybe other teachers to do that. But,
yep.
Yeah.
And then after that, we're gonna do at like 2 a.m. Saturday morning, Eastern time, 11 p.m. Friday, Pacific time. Tara stream with Maria Butina. That's it. That should be interesting. I definitely like talking to people who are on kill lists. That seems to be a thing I'm doing frequently now. So, but anyway, anything else that I'm missing? Sunday night, how do we miss that?
Sunday night, how do we miss that? Wait,
Indy might not be there for that. We'll figure out. We'll probably, knowing him, he will like make a clip show, and
so it'll probably be a clip show because I know he's traveling. So
let me look at
that and then
Telegram real quick. And look at. Sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Sunday, baby, something is happening Sunday, and then no Jesse next week, and then I think it's just us again next Wednesday.
And I think Monday, if all goes well, Tara will have Vanessa Beeley. I know people are a fan of her. People want to go check that out. I remember the last time I spoke with her and Tara, it went really well. So should be a good stream. So check that out. I think that's going to be 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern that Monday. So yeah, anyway, I think that's everything.
Please, so please subscribe to us. Thank you guys so much. We've been really appreciative of how, the network has slowly but surely been growing. We're very close to being monetized. I mean, we have a community strike, unfortunately. So like,
yeah, that should be about over
until December.
Yeah.
So in my mind, our goal would be that we should be
by the end of the year,
by the new year. So
we're at 744 subscribers as of right now. 1,000. 246 subs for us to be at that monetization point. Yeah.
And you guys are watching us, so we are very thankful for that. Like, you guys are.
And if you
watching our content,
if you go to that indienews.network right there underneath the screen, and also down in the doobly-doo, it should have all the links to all our channels that you can sub to. Rumble, Rockfin, we're on all the platforms. Our merch store is there if you want to go to INN, what is it, indienews.shop, I think.
Yep.
You should be able to find that.
Holidays are coming up.
Yep.
I know some of you are starting Christmas shopping now.
I'll be working on some Christmas stuff for that. That should be fun. Some holidays stuff might be interesting for that. And we're gonna start filling that out with a lot more. I know Crab wanted to put some stuff in, and he'll knock that out far quicker than I could. But anyway, but yeah, please go follow all the channels, and you can find all the links to all the members of INN right there at that indienews.network link tree. But I guess that's it. As always, labels are bad. Stay independent, everybody. Good night, friends.
Guys. Have a good week.